and she was walking down the street in this little restaurant, just talking to everybody, people that didn't care, sort of like you guys are acting like toward me right now.
Yeah,
yes.
We don't care what you have to say.
Yeah, I keep hearing a sound, and I'm not sure where it's coming from.
So she stops this guy. He's like just reading a paper, minding his own business, and starts talking. So, where are you from? And we couldn't hear what he said. And then she said, never heard of it.
And then just walked on. She was like, so where are you from?
Never heard of it.
Never heard of it. Never heard of it. Whoo. Well,
so what's our
like
topic
most
today?
of my life. Never heard of it.
Never heard of it.
Well, you got
Voice advertise.
to have Julie here to do it. She's the
She does it
master.
good.
Oh,
Yeah. Yeah, so episode 2, good to be back. Misfit Social podcast.
How's my hair look?
Perfect.
Hard thinking
Perfect.
on hard issues.
Hard thinking.
You got to do it with the voice. Hard thinking.
So
on
hard.
Hard issues.
So hard thinking.
So hard.
Yeah, they'll throw that out there for Marcus.
Yeah.
Paul's like, here we go. Here we go.
That's what I was afraid of.
Yeah, rightly so.
So what's the topic?
Yeah, what are we talking about today?
Well, I think we're going to talk about unplugging and what that means. Yeah, it kind of warms your heart. You're kind of the non-guest guest today.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
We're gonna grill you,
I love it.
put you through the ringer, air all your dirty laundry.
Sounds like 29 years of marriage.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah, I'm familiar. Let's do it.
You want that edited out, or you
No,
want to leave
I
it
want
in?
that in there. Yeah,
All right, let's leave it
absolutely.
in. Yeah, so we've been talking about unplugging, returning to nature. I mean, obviously through COVID, there was a huge push for this just because that was the only option people had to really have a life outside of their home. I mean, they felt really trapped. And I think that probably brought something back to society a little bit. We're still getting some overflow from that now. And I know that led you into thinking about, hey, what does this mean to get out? Now, I know you were already getting out, but just give us a little bit of
Yeah.
No, go ahead.
Oh, well, I'm sorry. But I was thinking, weren't you working, though, for outdoor company, right? You were working for...
Yeah. So was pastoring, but also working at REI, Recycled Employee Income. No, I mean, Recreational Equipment Incorporated. But yeah, because all my income went right into gear. But yeah, I was definitely involved in that culture and scene. And then in the Northwest, it's the air you breathe,
But you were saying return to nature, and you like to say return to wonder, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, return to wonder.
Yeah, so return to wonder is something that you've been working on. But before we dive into that, let's just talk about, what does wonder, I know that's a focus for you, but let me direct this at you for a second, Paul.
Yeah.
When you think of wonder, like what comes to mind?
Creativity.
Okay.
I mean, for me, if you just always, on point, getting up and doing your disciplined thing, like you're a Marine waking up every morning, do your push-ups and head into life, and you never take a break from that pace, then to me, you're going to be very unhealthy, right?
Okay.
Yeah. So some way you have to move back from routine or make it a part of your routine, whatever, but a cycle of, that's what I think of. I don't know if that's the direction you go with it, but I'm willing to change my mind.
Yeah. So
Very good.
For me, being raised in Western Kentucky, deer hunting is enormous. Mm-hmm. And I remember as a child, when I was really into deer hunting, I said a child, but really as a young person, like during those 2 weeks of rifle season, it's like the world for hunters stops. But if you know a guy who is a big outdoorsman, no matter what his background is, you always, when you have discussions, hear this, I feel some kind of connection, either to the earth, to nature, to some form of agency, to God. There's just
It's not
something
just the
about
hunting.
yeah, because like if you've ever been hunting, you go in when the forest or the woods are dark and it's asleep, like it's eerie.
Have you ever? You can be the coldest you've ever been in your life sitting in a stand.
Yeah, and it not really. It seems it doesn't even have to be that cold.
Something about
It just makes it colder.
Yeah.
Sitting there.
To sit there and listen to things start to wake up.
Wake up.
Like,
oh man,
hear the birds start to chirp just a little bit. Squirrels are playing around. And I have found myself at times distracted by that. And if you're a hunter, a lot of times right at daylight is when things are starting to move. So you need to be watching. If you're up in the air, you need to be watching in proximity. But I have found myself captivated by two squirrels playing around, or the woodpecker working on the wood, or just whatever it is in nature, not even able to watch, what I'm there for. So when you think of wonder, Royce, I know you've worked at REI and you've been in Seattle, but just give us a little bit of what is wonder to you.
Yeah, and maybe just start with a little bit of the story on that. The way wonder has come to me is because in meditation, prayer, I was spending a lot of time outdoors. I was raised in Texas and Southeast Texas, and our mountains are pine trees. So that's it. There's no mountains. There's not even hills. But we had the big thicket. But I got to go on a trip to Portland in the back of a Ford F-150. Not kidding. Rode in the back of an
F-150. Like in the back as in the bed?
In the back. It had a camper. It had a camper top.
I've been on
but it was
one of
just
those trips too.
Windows open.
Children die on these kind of trips.
Oh yeah. I wasn't buckled in.
Yeah.
Did they put a nice little twin mattress back there for you?
So is this when you were a kid or?
I was 12 years old.
Okay.
And I went with my,
I was like, I didn't know if Deanne made you ride in the back of the truck a few weeks ago, or this was.
I'll say it like this. My deeply rural friends were going to see family members in Oregon, and the only room for me and my buddy was in the back of the truck.
Yeah.
And we rode all the way to Oregon in the back of a pickup truck. That was
one of those trucks that didn't have the king cab. It was just like the flat, straight.
Absolutely, yeah.
It didn't have those slide windows.
I think they had extended cab, but no door to it.
That's when trucks weren't fancy.
No, trucks were not fancy.
Wrestling was real. And trucks were real trucks.
We're talking about wonder, right? I rode in the back of a Ford F-150.
That's wonder.
It was a 21-day trip, and I spent the entire time in the back.
Fumes.
What was it? Essence of unleaded. Essence of unleaded. But going to Portland and camping, because you don't camp in Texas a whole lot until maybe the fall or winter. Somewhere in there
until where it's January.
Cool. Yeah, where your skin's not bubbling.
Yes.
With heat. But so it imprinted on me, the mountains.
Oh wow.
And the temperatures that allow you to be outside and sleep outside and camp, it imprinted on me as a 12-year-old. So I've always wanted to get back to that, and the doors opened for us to go back to Seattle. And so I was just growing in my hiking and then my backpacking, and then was starting to mountaineer. And I would, in these journeys, in these trips, I would pray, I would meditate, I would listen, I would unwind from the noise and the chaos of all the things that bombard us in the modern era. I mean, if you just think like how easy it is for someone to reach out to you versus 100 years ago. They had to write a letter.
Now, when you're doing this, were you doing it like by yourself or sometimes with groups? Or?
Yeah, both. But I would
still had the same dynamic, still felt the same way.
Yeah. And when I was alone, and then I'm just wired. I asked the question, why am I here? Why am I here? What am I here for? And to our glorious audience, I could be crazy. I likely am crazy, but I would hear back as an inner thought that I'm dialoguing with.
They make medicine for that, right?
I know,
that's right. You're having
know.
conversations in your head.
That's I would say they were more in my heart, but they might be in my head too. Yeah. But I kept hearing, you are here for wonder. Wonder. And sometimes it would just be one word. So I would ask this question. I encourage people to just try this, practice this, Put a question out there and then get just still and see what comes back to you. And why I'm paying so much attention to this is not just how repetitive and consistent it was, but how unlike not the word I even wanted to hear. It's not even the word that I would readily go to if you were to ask me that question before.
The wonder? I'm here for wonder.
Before I had this experience, I wouldn't answer this question in an interview that way. So that's why
What am I here for? I'm here for wonder.
Wonder. I'm like, what does that mean? So I wrestled with that for several years. And I just started saying yes to that because that message wasn't going away. So I've explored that. And I want to give that little bit of background to why wonder is so meaningful to me, because I believe it's an identity word for me. Because as I look at myself, I enjoy experiencing that, but I love helping someone experience it. Okay. And so what is wonder? I will go to Socrates, and he says, one of my favorite quotes ever, wisdom begins in wonder. Wonder, psychologically or even scientifically, is what psychologists would say is awe tinged with a little bit of fear. Awe tinged with a little bit of fear. And it's usually
kind of like what I experienced when you took me on that goat path that you called a road. We'll get to that later, but go ahead. I just wanted to, there was more fear than awe, but.
Are you saying that trip where when you got out of the seat that chunks of leather had been pulled out of it by your hind end?
Yes. Yeah. It had a firm
pucker factor
grip. Pucker factor was at whatever the maximum pucker factor was.
It was there.
It was there.
So hermetically sealed is not an understatement. Well, just going back. So wonder, awe, if you think of it like this working definition, awe tinged with a little bit of fear. You can't experience wonder without a little bit of fear there.
So I was going to the Unplugged thing, which was just like, how do you get away from the routine?
Yeah.
But you're going to this is a whole different thing.
Well,
it's sort of.
It is that, but it's kind of this baseline value that I would say for human flourishing, we need moments of awe tinged with a little bit of fear. And I would say almost 100% of the time, you'll need to see and experience something with magnitude, something bigger than you are, something that's not easily grasped, scaled, conquered, managed in your head, and just enjoy it. Like for me, it's a mountain valley or a mountain peak, and I'm just, that's way bigger than I am. And I'm just enjoying it. Puts me in a state where I'm freed from thinking I'm bigger than I am.
Yeah, sure.
Staring at the Grand Canyon, it's like,
that was what I was going to ask you next.
No,
I was just going to ask like the Grand Canyon, right?
I think the Grand Canyon is a perfect example of you get to enjoy it, but don't fool around. Fool around, you're going to find out. And they do every single year, right? Misstep, the absolute out of control accident ratios now because people aren't respecting the environment they're in. There's something there with wonder where enjoy it, but respect it.
Well, sort of like we were up in Ouray there, and they have outside when you're driving out of Ouray is that what they call it, the $1 million highway or something like that.
Yes.
And the reason isn't that it costs a lot to build it. It's the stuff that fell off in the ravine.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Yeah.
And it's down there and it's unretrievable.
Yeah.
I believe that's the story,
I think
right?
that's the story.
Right.
Yeah, no, I'm out on that.
It gives you that feeling. And like for the first little bit you're there, when you're riding around those roads, it's like, I don't know if I can do this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The edge is right there and it makes you,
And when you're driving, you have that at least sense of control. But when you're in the passenger seat, you're trusting somebody else driving.
This guy, when we're in Mazama.
What's a Mazama?
Mazama is, how many people live in Mazama?
Hundreds, if even a couple hundred.
It's in Washington. What, 2.5 hours north,
way
east.
deep in the North Cascades.
Yeah,
it's like kind of like a final point of civilization.
But it's the coolest little town. I mean, they have like 3 or 4 things, but everything there is like their general store is the grocery store you wish you had in like right next door to you. I mean, everything was really cool, but this brother says, well, we're going to drive this road up.
Yeah.
Now, we're in a BMW M5. So in my mind, I'm thinking...
Not like a Jeep or something, right?
I just want to input here that he was encouraged to rent a 4-wheel drive Jeep, but they weren't available. So I'm letting you off there.
No, they were not available. I couldn't. I was like, so I just need something that's all-wheel drive.
So when I see him, he's in a Beamer, and I'm like, well, at least it's all-wheel drive.
So he tells me we're going to go up this road. Now,
what time of year is this, by the way?
Early season, so we had to stop. We had to stop because the snow wasn't clear.
Yeah, once we got up to heaven, where we were driving into the heavens, there was snow still there. But so I experience vertigo at times, and when I'm flying, I get spatial disorientation really bad.
Really? I did not know this.
So we're driving up this road, and there's pines on both sides, and it's kind of tight. And so when that's visually for me, when it's like that, it's fine. But we come to this clearing. Now keep in mind, when we come to this clearing, the only reason it's clear is because this is the area that tends to wash out the most.
Yeah, trees can't grow here.
Yeah, there's fresh rock fall that we're riding over in the Beamer.
And so when that comes out, it's just like, bam. And it's probably 7,000 feet off to the left.
I'd say 2 to 3. Yeah, okay. 2 to 3 for sure. But we're at 7,000 feet nearly.
Okay, total. But it felt like 20,000 for me. Like, I mean, everything started closing in on me. I thought
you were driving?
Yes, I thought there was a chance I was going to pass out. But I'm just like breathing through it. When we get through that, I said, hey, you're driving back down this mountain.
Well, that's what happened to our buddy. That's what happened to our buddy. You remember, he was paralyzed, dude. I mean, he just got like
in the
frozen in fear. Yeah. I've watched those people. I've watched videos of people doing crazy stuff and had that feeling. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, how can you do this?
So that would qualify as wonder.
Yes, absolutely.
I don't know.
And the fear, or at least the fear thing is a part of it. Is that how often? Let me just kind of maybe put it in a general context, whether it's business or outdoors. Now, I will say outdoors has a primacy to it above all other forms of wonder because it's so fundamental to our humanness that we need to get to those spaces. There's a reset there. There's a refresh in the brain. But whatever it is how often are we putting ourselves in places where we don't have as much control? We're in control, but we don't have as much control. We're reminded that there are things and forces, just take nature or geological forces that create a mountain.
Yeah.
You're not in control of that.
Yeah, no.
All of our science, we can't control that. We can't make a mountain.
Right.
So in that, you're just in an environment to where you're in control of your safety, you're being wise, but you're also in an environment that you didn't create.
Yeah.
You didn't make it. You're not the source.
What is this, a micro departure here, but you know this whole thing about being barefoot? What is that all about?
Grounding. No,
it's legit, dude.
I mean, it is.
It's legit.
Is that part of this?
I did that when we were in Mazama. You're like, oh, I see what you're doing. You're grounding.
Do you have to hum or anything?
No, it's just seriously like touching and
you
interacting.
have to hum with this hand and take a 9-volt battery and put it on your tongue and this hand while you're grounding.
This is what it's like.
Yeah, and you'll feel wonder.
Yeah. And your buddy comes up behind you with some raw 110.
Yeah, bam.
Feel it.
No, tell me about the grounding though. I mean, does it have anything to do with that, or is that?
I think that would fall into a subcategory of that in unplugging, right? There is a movement towards that. Even homestead farming is that there seems to be a large yearning to get back to simple rhythms and roots and being in touch with the ground. So putting your hands in the dirt.
I know nothing about this, but I'm just going to say the few videos that I've watched and why I practice it. So when I'm doing yoga, sometimes I practice without a mat. And then there's other days whenever I'll just go out barefoot with my cup of coffee, and it might be 30 degrees outside, but just experience grounding for about 15 minutes. Some of the science behind it, I don't know I don't know if it's been proven by real scientists or if it's just stuff on YouTube, but you can literally go out with a meter for measuring electricity. My dad's going to be unhappy because I don't remember what that's called, and that's like his favorite gadget.
Multimeter.
Mm-hmm. But if you have shoes on and you hold the probe and stick the grounding probe in the ground, you won't be grounded. Like nothing moves. Okay. But because you're separated. But the magnetic pull, if you're barefoot,
it's moving through you.
It gives you
the Earth's field.
It's picking up that meter will pick up and so a lot of people are discussing that does something to everything within our body whenever we're connected to that. Our body has a natural response
all
to
I
that.
can think of is that guy that used to go with Bear Grylls or whatever his name was.
Yeah.
The dude was always barefoot, the long ponytail, and they used to get in all arguments all the time on documentaries. You know what I'm talking about? Those outdoor shows.
I watched.
He was barefoot. I mean, for like 20 years or something.
Yeah, yeah.
My favorite barefoot show to watch is Naked and Afraid. I don't know about the Bear Grylls guy.
I hadn't watched that one.
There's a lot of butt crack on there, but
Let's just say they're
I can't
likely
be on this podcast.
yes, you can.
I'm just saying they're likely pretty grounded.
They're
just
very grounded. They're very grounded.
Well, and I think there's something to just those simple things, right? Like taking your shoes off and just standing and letting let the grass get between your toes. I think that's there. But then metaphorically, if we don't even look at it literally or scientifically as the actual skin touching dirt, we're separated by our technology. Just us, right? It's this move towards connection again, and connection starts not by adding more to your day, but by maybe removing some of it and resetting, hearing, listening, getting quiet.
It also makes me think about people's desire to do things with like animals and farm things. Like my niece, she really loves having chickens, and she goes out there with them. I mean, it's like it's a deal.
Yep.
My wife loves. I mean, like if you go to horses, we need to do it while we're here in your place. But like horses, just something about horses and her being around horses is like rejuvenating.
Coming back to the me and the we is having something that's leaning and trusting you to provide for it.
Yeah.
And being responsible for something.
Meaning and leaning.
Yeah. Being responsible. If our technology promised that it would help us be more connected, it hasn't delivered on that promise because it's actually offering a artificial version of it. I'm not saying there's no good in it. It's just that, for example, with something as simple as a thumbs up on Facebook, right? Which the programmers meant something very good by that, has become a way by which young people measure their value, right? Across all the different social media platforms.
So we could go on a major rabbit trail here.
Yeah.
But a couple of the other guys that I follow, I think they would push back on whether the programmers meant that well or whether that's gaming theory. And those are things that are hooks.
I wanted to give them
try to get you to come back.
Yeah. No doubt there's a psychological ploy that's there. I just, in my brief comment, wanted to give the benefit of the doubt that maybe just
It's such a superficial
it's such
way.
And I guess the main point I wanted to make is that we're being told that technology and services is going to help us.
Something.
That we're going to be more connected, only to come and find out that if it's delivering any kind of connection, it's connection light, like a Bud Light. It's promised as a lie. It may taste great, but it's less filling. And so the idea here is that it feels to be that there's a real call to
Is that
just
an infomercial for Bud Light? Or?
No, we're not sponsored, not yet anyway.
But just in case, hey, Bud Light, if you're watching, we'll take your money.
Turn my can around.
Yeah, I turned your can a while ago. Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, I come back to, and I think just to bring this into a theological space for just a little bit, for those who might want to at least consider it, this axiom in the Hebrew is the fear. It's said in Proverbs over and over again, and in English it's commonly just translated, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. Isn't it cool that Socrates is actually echoing that as well? Wisdom begins in wonder. That's actually almost a synonymous phrase. So the Hebrew word for fear in those contexts is yirah, Y-I-R-A-H, yirah. And fear works in English, but that's where English struggles, right? Other cultures might have multiple words for a thing, and then we have fear. It's like us with love. The Greeks had 5 different words to describe love, and we have love. With the Hebrew...
So can I stop right there? So whenever you say that, if I think about that word fear, the way you're describing it, and I go back to what you said about the Grand Canyon, is it awe. It's awe.
It's more awe.
Yeah.
Reverent awe.
Yeah,
is a good gloss.
Yeah, it's
as opposed to the heart pounding. No, or is it both?
Well, I just heard, this is where I was going. And I love this question because the rabbi that I just listened to about this fear is, if the fear, because it is still technically one of the better English words is fear, but we have so many connotations with it.
With fear.
That we struggle with, what does that mean? Should I be in terror of the Lord to start down the path of wisdom? And it's not the context of that. It's this. What happens when the fear is no longer about you? That was the question that was asked. My safety, I'm worried. When I'm self-conscious, which is the whole point of wonder, is to move you out of the
giant wave.
Yes.
That's pounding the shore, and you're like, oh man.
Yeah.
Yeah. You
Why
know
would
it could
somebody
kill
go
you.
out there and surf that?
Right.
Right.
You know that wave could obliterate you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you're actually appreciating it from a respectful place.
Yeah.
And that you're not considering the enjoyment of what it is in reference to your personal safety.
Yeah.
Or it's even like a storm or.
Yes. Lightning.
I mean,
thunder.
do you guys like to sit on a porch and
I
watch
love
a
it.
storm?
I love it.
Just,
I love it.
Yeah.
So there is a place to interact with it from safety. I'm not saying there isn't, but it's like, why do millions of people flock to the Grand Canyon?
Yeah.
To not be safe? No. To walk to the edge of it.
Yeah. And experience something that they know is bigger than they are, that just is.
So you're
we
saying.
need a dose of wonder. I was like, I don't want to get too preachy, but like that makes us better to have rhythmic frequency of experiencing that. It puts us in a better frame.
I was just thinking, often when I think of Unplugged, I think of, you should do a Sabbath, you should rest, you should have cycles of,
that's a part of it too.
Yeah, sure. But this is more, I mean, this is not something you could do every day, or.
I think we could incorporate more wonder in our life. I mean, just a moment ago, we walked out onto the dock of the pond.
And those birds took off. Yeah.
And the birds took off.
Yeah.
We didn't know that ducks were under the pier.
Yeah.
And there was this commotion. I thought it was fish swarming.
Yeah.
That was where my brain
I did hear the water. Yeah.
Yeah.
I heard shh, and I'm like, oh man, he must have like bait fish that hear the sound and he's about to feed the fish. Well, then the next thing happens is this little flock of ducks just shoot out from under it. And for a moment, your reality or your perspective is disrupted by something wonderful.
Yeah.
Something that we didn't control. Their flight, their feet just kind of skimming the water as they gained altitude. It was beautiful. That's a moment, and appreciating that and having a perspective.
Oddly, one of the other things I think that's like that for me is grandkids. You guys, you guys aren't there, but there's just something.
Evan, if you're listening, I don't plan on being there.
It's all about timing, right?
We have our first grandbaby on the way.
Yeah,
congratulations! And I can't,
dude.
I can't wait to experience that wonder.
My dad said, "Well, what's the difference between having kids and grandkids?" And his thing was, you always feel responsible for your kids. Like, it doesn't matter what age they are.
Yeah.
Or how they turn out, what they do, you always feel responsible. Grandkids, you don't feel that so much. You just get to enjoy the wonder. And the way they talk and their phrases and their, it's just fun. I mean, guys, I'm telling you.
Cliff, you were cooking on something there a second ago. What was that? What was that thought you had?
In some of the conversation, my mind is going back to just some natural events that have happened in the last few years. We had the eclipse. And during that eclipse, the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, because they were right dead on line at the full blackout. And so they opened up their facility. You had to buy tickets, but they put on a pretty good event, and there were several news stations there. So I just happened to be flipping around the channels, found a station, and the announcer he's kind of giving the play-by-play for the eclipse, right? And when it went full dark, like dark as in you could see the light on the camera come on.
Yeah. Because it's night at that point.
He got emotional.
Yes.
I did too.
He was like, I mean, this is national news. I mean, we're not talking about just some aloof person, whatever. I mean, this was,
it's a double rainbow.
It's a double rainbow.
It's almost a triple rainbow.
Brother Farnsworth just showed up. He's going to make a guest appearance. He's going to make a guest appearance soon. But I mean, he really did.
Yeah.
And then like when he did, the camera guy played on it and just kind of started people were hugging, like high-fiving, crying. And I had a personal experience recently, the meteorite showers that were coming through.
Sure.
Andrea and I, we rednecked it. We got the old Ford flatbed, put our pool chairs on it, strapped it down, and went out in a bean field with a bottle of wine and some solo cups.
Wonder.
And just
cool.
like most people have seen falling stars before, but these meteorites, man, it was something to behold. And like you said, I didn't feel fearful in that, but I felt really small. Like I felt.
And we have to open our definition of fear just a little bit and let it breathe, because the modern, maybe Western context of fear is just my personal safety.
Yeah. So awe then would be the,
yes.
I felt awe.
Right.
The first time I ever saw an electric storm, you've seen that where the lightning comes across the sky sideways.
Yeah.
I had never seen that. I was in my 20s. And I was in Texas. And it was like shooting across the sky. And it was long. It took a long time. And I was like, why have I never seen this in my entire life? Lightning just going sideways.
Mm-hmm.
It was the coolest thing.
Yeah.
I think wonder is like a precursor or a foundation to what would be metanoia, like rethinking. It puts us in a place to open our mind and potentially change the order of our mind. Like where I have there's an open whiteboard moment when I reset and wonder that I can have new thoughts, new creativity, new possibilities, because I'm reframing myself from not being 100% and trying to control my reality. I'm ready to receive.
So how do you capitalize on moments of awe? Is that what you're saying? Is like you purposely go into these places to create this sense of awe, right? And then you try to capitalize on that? Or what are you saying?
I would argue, I think that can happen.
I mean, how do you,
you could
maybe
go
I'm
out
being
there.
a little prescriptive with it, but
No, I think you could go out there to write a poem or bring your paint and canvas and paint. I think that
or
works.
write or whatever.
But I think what I would encourage people is just start allowing the frequency and see what happens. Meaning like something's going to happen every time we allow wonder in.
Would you characterize yourself as a workaholic? Or have you been in times?
I would have been in the past, but what I would say is I actually read an article from Harvard Business Review that was talking about how we are telic beings that need to spend more time being atelic.
Yes.
So telic is the fact that we are task oriented. And so everything becomes a task. And but atelic is like, they said it's the difference between, as a parent, a task for me is maybe cooking dinner for my family. That's a task for me. But as you said, what your dad used to say, you never stop being a parent. So how do we learn to push pause in practice? And I think for me, that was a big change in being a workaholic. And if I can just kind of do a Tunco plug here, one of the things that HBR article encouraged was how can companies bring atelic lifestyle into the workplace. So what we adopted is every quarter, every employee gets an atelic day. And that atelic day is designed for them to do something that is for them, that connects them with nature, awe, wonder, whatever they would like to call it. And then they kind of report back on that a little bit. So a lot of guys who are big into outdoors, they'll go fishing, but it's not an extra day for you just to do a project.
Yeah.
Just to be like, I've been needing to do this, or this is my honey-do list or whatever. It's for you to take those moments. And I do think you asked the question, is it possible to have it reoccurring? I think it is, but I think you have to, for a little bit, be telic about it. I think you do have to create some intentionality for experiencing that. Otherwise, like for your mountaineering that we're going to talk about here in just a minute, you have to be some level of intentionality.
I
about
think
that.
if you stay on point so much, you almost sabotage that yourself in other ways by medicating yourself with, things that maybe aren't so healthy, right?
Yeah.
I'm just being real here because like
the wonder's trying to come out somewhere. It's coming out. And a lot of times it'll come out in the form of an escape because you feel that's the only thing available to you.
Right.
When you could release healthy endorphins that your brain wants to create when you put yourself in a healthy position.
Or even guilt, like, I'm wasting time. Yeah. Right. Because that's how I am. I'm like,
that's a very good point.
I'm wasting time to do anything that's not productive.
Well, I go back to the Hebrew rhythm here, the Hebrew rhythm that everybody knows. It's 1/7. It's 1/7. So you have 6 days to be telic, and then it's recommended. And I don't make this some law or some religious thing you have to, but it's like this early pattern was 6 days to get into form and function and task. Now unplug.
Yeah. See, I think this has a
relish. I just want to say one more thing with Sabbath. We miss the idea of relishing, enjoying, and allow it to just sit so that you don't get into this never-ending rhythm of task-oriented. And it helps you revise and reset your task for the next sequence. You might learn and grow something by resting.
My kids are watching me with my grandkids, and they're like, who is this guy?
Who is where is this guy been?
Right, because it's a being, right? It's not just a doing. It's like, so when you fall in those moments when you're enjoying your kids, you're like, oh, we can push back that time, or whatever that was that we were going to do, and we're just going to stay in this moment with these kids.
Absolutely.
And I think I do watch my kids go, who is this guy? Because I was so task oriented with them.
Yeah.
It was unhealthy, actually.
Yeah. I love it. And what's one day? Because if you dig into the scriptures with this, the severity of violating Sabbath was pretty severe. There's even a story that I've struggled with for years, where someone's picking up sticks on the Sabbath and it was a death sentence.
So, and just for our audience.
Yes.
When we're talking about the sacred text, we're talking about what Christians would call the Old Testament,
the Hebrew scriptures.
The Hebrew scriptures would be known as the Torah the law, or the Tanakh, right?
Yeah, and one of the 10 commandments is the Sabbath, honor the Sabbath.
Yeah, right? Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think that's a great clarification. I just kind of want to just gently lead us there for a second and saying that guarding the Sabbath from the mind of, let's tell the scriptures like a story, the character of God in these stories really emphasizes honoring that 1/7.
Yeah.
And what I'm only getting at here in my point is that all of us can survive one day of not being the God of our reality.
Mm-hmm.
Just to try it one whole day where you're not trying to make everything happen. You're letting it happen.
Unless you are God.
Exactly.
Well, he rested.
And I'm saying if he modeled it, in the story, modeled resting.
And so that's what I found when you said about workaholic, is I found that I was trying to be God. Mm-hmm. And so I was trying to control every little detail.
Man.
And I heard Tim Keller say one time, he was like, yeah, you're not qualified for that job.
Yeah, exactly.
And we don't think sometimes how little, so many little things we're just trying to, and I noticed that in my frustration and my anger, when I lack empathy for things, jobs that haven't been done in a time frame that I feel like they need to be done in. And so that was a big pullback for me. And I think other people that I notice at Tunco, a lot of people really do struggle. You mentioned guilt just really quickly, but in the fast-paced success consumerism society that we live in, people who are successful, hard driving, they really do wrestle. When we were at the, where did we go? The Kingdom at Work. So we were talking about introducing at Tunco a sabbatical from their model.
Okay.
They do the 30 days sabbatical. They get 30 days paid, plus they get $10,000 after 10 years. So we were talking about that with their team because I wanted to introduce that. And one of my executives, he was like, man, look.
Don't make people wait 10 years.
He said, he said, I'm being honest with you. He said, we've been in this meeting for an hour and I have my phone turned over where I can't see it. And that's giving me anxiety right now. He said, I cannot even fathom 30 days.
30 days away.
And I think a lot of the problem that we've discovered is that we, in the United States, we either graduate high school, hopefully, or some university, and we go right into it. And then because we go right into the grind, we have kids, sometimes we have grandkids before we even really have any kind of real break.
Oh yeah, people are racing toward retirement thinking, finally.
But there's so much of our value system that has changed over those 30 years, but we don't ever stop. And like you're saying, when you're out there mountaineering and you're just like looking up at the stars and it's like, okay, why am I here? You know, like really taking a true inventory assessment. I think COVID actually caused a lot of people to do that. And the younger generation that we're seeing at Tunco, COVID really changed their value system big time about what they prioritize, what their pace is. I think a lot of people blame the IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act and all the money they got paid out. And that did have some issues, but I think the mortality, having to look it in the eye, no matter what your age was, has really, really changed a lot for people.
All I can think about is Larry the Cable Guy.
Yeah, what'd he say about it?
Something about that old boy, he's got a lot of quit in him.
he's got a lot of quit in him.
Well, I mean, that's the whole thing about, like being a lazy guy, like, shoot, man, all you do is golf, and all you do is fish.
Is that how you feel if you take too long of a break?
Oh yeah. I mean, I feel like I have to justify my existence by production.
Well, and I think that's a modern Western ethos, right? That we have to, I think it's nothing wrong with being a hard worker, but if I become so certain that my value comes from my performance, then I'm going to have a struggle. I've looked at it like this, is that we tend to, and I'm looking at this and explaining it from a spiritual growth or inner formation, is that we balance between putting our hands on it and then letting it go. I've seen this over and over, and I'm better at this naturally than I am this. So I need people like both of you.
On task.
Yeah.
That old boy.
Royce will let go of something in a heartbeat.
You don't want him holding your rappel rope.
But I find the depth of my relationships will almost always have some version of when we're really helping each other in some way.
Yeah.
Will be my friends like you two saying, I want to put your hands on that.
Yeah.
And move into it. And I'm like, all right, yeah, because I'm leaning into my strength. Well, you no doubt have a strength to produce, but often, sometimes, or most of the time, I would go, the breakthrough of what's going to be the next level for us in our formation or growth would be the thing we're least strong in. So for performers, a lot of times what really needs to happen is just a moment of this. And for me, it would be a moment of this.
Yeah.
And finding that rhythm, we need that all together to be fully human and flourish as what we're meant to be.
I'm the great interrupter, but anyway, I was thinking of the Old Testament, another nuanced story was God, gave this law down from the mountain, take a Sabbath. And it wasn't just 7 days, but it was the land also had to rest every seventh year.
I was going to go there in a minute. Yeah. Because it's a sequence of rests.
And then they never obeyed it. I mean, the land was supposed to go fallow, sort of like your tomato plants out there.
Yeah, you could farm for 6 years, and then on that 7th year,
didn't cultivate it.
You had to let it sit.
Yeah. So whatever you got was what you got. And then they didn't obey it. They didn't obey it. And if you roll the tape forward on that story, it's like God collected all of it in one fell swoop. After 70 years, what was it?
Because it's
490 years of not doing it.
Is that not an impossible coincidence?
70 years of exile, and the land set fallow.
So they are led out by another foreign power, exiled out of their own territory for the exact amount of time that they had not
honored the Sabbath.
And so for whatever it is, it's like the bill comes due. It
comes due on your health. It comes due on your family.
You might be
dynamic.
in a hospital bed. You might be, and I don't want that to sound too dire, but the point is that those moments of reprieve, and they come somewhere because they are bills that have to be paid in who we are. And so it's healthier to engage it and say, I'd like that frequency in my life. And there's a spectrum of ways to bring it in, but don't forget it. Wonder is critical to our well-being.
I think it's safe to say that not only philosophically, or theologically, but also scientifically.
It's there.
It is there that the land needs rest.
Yep.
We as humans need rest. It is there.
Yes.
All right. So let's just, we're going to get up against the ropes on time here, but tell us a little bit about what is Return to Wonder. I know that's your thing. That's what you're working on. Give us a little bit about that. I got to experience a little of that.
Are you talking
wonder
about
with you.
the practical side of how you take this
No,
on?
I'm talking about the exercise and the programs that he has going on.
Yeah. So Return to Wonder is where I pastored in Seattle for 13 years and then have really felt drawn to step away and prioritize coaching, consulting. And so there's content, but my heart isn't, I love content. Like I love this, but my heart is to begin to take people. And so we're in the early stages of it, but this year I got to take 2 groups of clients up the second tallest mountain in Washington.
Oh,
it's a volcano. Wow. It's non-technical, so you don't need mountaineering experience.
Yeah, I've heard all those lies from you before, but keep going. Read on.
Well, the clients that I had on these 2 separate trips, we got right to camp, got camp set up, got water figured out, food figured out, and then the lights come on. And by that, it gets dark and the stars come out. And to hear these 2 groups ooh and ah, as if they had never seen the night sky. Obviously they had, but it was hitting them after the hard, arduous work of climbing up to about 9,800 feet.
Yeah.
And then setting camp on the side of an active volcano.
Yeah.
It's not dormant, but it's not doing anything either.
Pompeii wasn't about to happen.
No, it's not that active.
Yeah.
It's not a dead volcano.
Right.
I mean, we'll
know where to find you.
Yeah, one day
you'll be a cast.
Hopefully it's outside of our lifetime, but it will likely go off.
I'll pour a cast and I'll say, that was Royce.
That was Royce. Bringing people into places of wonder. So I would just say I want to create content that inspires wonder. My growth methodology is where is the wonder in your life? So it's not just, I don't approach it from what do you need to be doing as much as where is wonder wooing you? Let's lean there and then we'll reframe what we need to do. So it's about getting our tasks reshuffled after a moment of wonder. What do we discover? I would say it like this, what is trying to get through to us, but our death grip on trying to make something happen is ignoring the answer to our prayer request or our desire. Stopping just a moment, saying, if you want to get back to that death grip, you can. I hope you don't. Not from death grip anyway. And what are you hearing? What's that one thing calling you? And every single time when I've had that on various levels, whether it's coaching or consulting with teams and leadership or taking someone on a trip, they are a different person. They're and usually it's a subversive, counterintuitive thing that's the answer to what they're looking for. Yeah. But it won't come without a moment of wonder.
So try to put that simple. It's subversive, counterintuitive.
It subverts the way. So a lot of times I've only got so much energy. You've only got so much energy, and I really want a thing to happen. And it seems that a lot of us can get stuck in grinding, trying to make a thing happen, when the subversive wooing is, why don't you stop? But the inner voice back here is like, if I stop, it's all going to fall apart.
Yeah, so there's tension in that, right?
Yes.
And some of that comes to, are we willing to submit? And you said it a while ago, at some point in time, the bill comes due. Mm-hmm. And so we're seeing that now with people's health.
Yes.
I find
marriages and relationships.
Yeah.
Marriages.
Mental health.
Mental health. So mental health is about as large of a subject in today's world as we're seeing. And it seems like there is a return to not only wonder, but the principles of like Stoicism, philosophy, some Eastern religion, Eastern religious practices, from yoga to things of that nature.
Functional medicine.
Mm-hmm. Would you correlate a lot of that in the Wonderville?
I think so.
In the city of Wonderville?
Because I think wonder, at its roots, for me at least, is about being reminded that I am not the master of all reality. I cannot make everything. I don't have the means to make everything. And that's counterintuitive to what we hear. I don't have the means to make everything happen or make everything possible that I would like to see. So it's this counterintuitive idea that maybe I need to let go of this thing I'm wanting to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I'm even called to see happen.
Mm-hmm.
Take your hands off of it. I didn't say forever. Experience reality bigger than you, mountains that were there before you are here and will be there after you're gone. I'm just using a mountain.
Yeah.
Experience something you didn't make. You're not even responsible for it. You don't even know quite how it got there.
Right.
And let that reframe your problem, your need, your goal, your career, your leadership,
Nice.
your vision. And then you'll have tools to come back into. And if I can use that Hebrew scripture rhythm, then you'll have 6 fresh days of productivity from that unplug moment to be more effective and more powerful.
I would liken it a little bit to like sometimes in the morning when I'm fresh, I can get things done in an hour and a half, 2 hours that I can't get done in a whole week, just by virtue of inspiration and working in the moment. Your brain's lit, you know.
I would say Sabbath and wonder has that kind of efficiency when we have that moment of reprieve that a lot of times we're too afraid to take because we're like, it's going to fall apart. No, it's not. That's what I think Sabbath keeps reminding us. The world doesn't fall apart just because you don't work that.
That's why it had to be a rule. That's why it had to be a rule, because you won't do it.
You won't do it.
You won't do it.
Because the allure of our own self-justifying, which is what I think shame is a lot of times when we're not working, is we like to feel that we're in control of justifying our value. Sabbath reminds us that you're valuable without you justifying your value. You're valuable.
So let's kind of wrap it up with this. I think I established 2 nicknames for you, or one apiece during this episode.
Now this is going public now. You don't need to be throwing out.
Well, he self-proclaimed he is the great interrupter.
I just did that. Yeah.
That's
hard because I got
interrupter.
The great interrupter, and I said Wonderville, so I'm calling you the mayor. The mayor of Wonderville.
I like it. I'll take it.
I thought the mayor of Whoville would also work.
This would work.
Yes. I'll take it.
You've seen that guy.
So we're going to have
Hook her up and kiss it, Whoville. My kids made me.
That's you got a great Grinch voice.
Yeah. Well, my kids made me watch How the Grinch Stole Christmas at least 100 times. Yeah.
All right. So real quick, just make it almost one word or one location. The biggest, most crazy experience of wonder in your life ever. Give me a location.
I'm going to say attempting the summit of the American Border Peak, which Rainier is our tallest mountain. American Border Peak for me was 5 to 10 times harder than one of the harder climbs you'll do in Mount Rainier, because it was 80% off-grid, off-trail. Route finding, rotten rock, 11 hours of class 4 scramble, which is you probably should have equipment. And a storm coming that was about to make a 4.5 hour traverse wet and trying to get off that mountain.
That location is the what?
Yeah.
What's the location?
American Border Peak.
Okay. I'm pretty sure that's a piece of wonder that I will never experience.
No, we're doing it this year, actually.
Negative.
Just in the fall.
Negative.
So a couple of winters ago, we went on a snowmobile trip, sub-zero temperatures for a couple of days, and it just like all these national parks, the lakes freeze over, and so it's just like these meadows, almost like and you're going down riverbeds that you could never do any other way. And there was just a sense of awe because you would go out, there's no tracks, there's nothing.
And that's in Minnesota?
In Minnesota.
Yeah.
North, just a few minutes away from Canada, essentially.
Yeah.
And going out on those lakes, it was freezing. But it was cool. It was just really, it made you just often would go out in those open things or down those riverbeds and you're like, this is crazy.
Mm-hmm.
I loved it. Bathed in white too.
Yeah. All white.
Awesome.
And then being with family and, sharing it with some people was pretty cool too.
Wonder, everybody.
That's some wonder. Mine would be the Great Barrier Reef. So we went on a fishing trip, and when we boated out of Cairns to get to the reef, you're at about 2.5, 3 hours to get there. So we fished a little bit,
wow.
and now you can't see land anywhere from that distance. And so we're going back in to anchor up, and where we were at, none of the reef was breached out of the water. So it's completely submersed. He pulls back in behind the reef, and I'm telling you, you're several miles offshore, and man, it was as calm as my little pond out there. And he said, he dropped anchor, he got us all out there and poured us all some Captain Morgan and Coke. And he said, all right, you guys are about to experience wonder like you never have before. And he turned Bon Jovi on, turned the lights out, and
Living on a prayer?
yeah, from left to right, I mean, as front to back, as far around as you could see, it was nothing but stars. It was like you could not see the end of them. And I mean,
Stars. You could see the
stars,
sky.
Stars in the sky.
I know those.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you mean? You saw them on the reflection of the water?
No, what I'm saying is because of
He was
like
seeing the
light
real
pollution.
sky. The real
like
sky
that.
part.
Uninterrupted.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
I'm like, what are you talking about?
Stars.
We're
the
on
moon,
water here. I thought you were going to say something about the reef.
Yeah. No, so the reef just made it calm, but because there was zero light pollution out there and it was so clear, I mean, it was. And you want to talk about seeing shooting stars in a setting like that? I mean, you just watch, and I mean, that's the most wonder I've ever experienced. It was fantastic. All right, that's season 2 of the Misfit. That's episode 2 of Misfit Social, returning to wonder. Royce, thank you for sharing everything with us.
That was pretty cool.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
All right, let's get out of here.
Go get some wonder.
Let's go get some.
I wonder.
I went on a.
Does reefer count as wonder?
Oh, get out.
Well, it'll enhance wonder. That's for
I
sure.
went on a snorkel.